Hello everybody, it's Ashwin Rao. For those of you who don't know me, I've been a long-time Leica lens and camera enthusiast, and I decided to start this YouTube channel to both inform and entertain you on all things Leica. Let's talk about the Voïgtlander 35mm f2 APO Lanthar lens. Now you might be saying, well, here's a guy, me, who's talking about Leica things and has decided to review a Voïgtlander lens as their very first review. I will say that Voïgtlander has caught my attention in recent years. Why would they have caught my attention when they've been around for about 2 decades manufacturing M-mount lenses for that entire time? Well, for me, it gets all down to image quality, and that means imaging sharpness, image rendering, and performance in the field. And Cosina, which used to manufacture both Voïgtlander and Zeiss lenses, has focused their efforts on producing a wide range of Voïgtlander lenses across a wide range of focal lengths with a wide range of apertures, so different barrels, harkening to different eras, trying to appeal to as many Leica-type photographers as possible. You know, I love that type of innovation, and while Leica has continued to produce incredible quality optics, the price of Leica lenses has continued to escalate over the years to the point where buying a new lens for me is a really difficult proposition. The 35mm APO Lanthar is a lens that I'm showcasing here. I acquired this lens from Stephen Gandy at CameraQuest. For those of you who don't know, CameraQuest is the primary US distributor and authorized dealer of all things Voïgtlander in America. Why would you buy this lens over any other 35mm lens available? Because there's a lot of 35mm lenses available. For me, it's all about imaging quality and, like I say, imaging sharpness. The 35mm APO Lanthar lens was designed to be a high quality, high resolving lens by Voïgtlander. It was meant to compete with Leica's own APO designed lenses, including the 50mm APO Summicron and the recently released 35mm APO Summicron. The latter, that 35mm APO Summicron, costs upwards of $8,000. This lens cost $1,149 as of this video's production. So it costs 1/8 the price. What do you get in the Leica lens that you might not get in this lens? Well, the Leica lens is substantially smaller. This is actually a rather large lens for a 35mm f2 lens, but I don't have giant hands, and you can see that this lens overall is not that big, especially if you're coming from the mirrorless or autofocus world. This is going to be one of the smallest lenses you own. It has apochromatic correction. This gives you the best color reproduction available in modern lens design, and eliminates things like axial chromatic aberration that can cause purple fringing and different color shifts in your images. So apochromatic lenses are very high quality lenses in general, and Voïgtlander has begun to produce these even in 35mm focal length, which has historically been extremely difficult to do. It's also part of the reason why Leica itself has a tough time producing wide-angle APO lenses and only very recently released the APO Summicron lens. The LH13 lens hood is made to fit both the 35 and the 50mm APO Lanthar lenses. And I think it's important to use the hood. It offers protection of the front side elements of the lens, and 2, if used without the lens, the APO Lanthar does have moments where it can flare a little bit, and the hood will prevent that. So good practice to use a hood for this particular lens. Give it a consideration. As you can see, it has an aperture range of f2 all the way to f16 in half-stop aperture increments. So you can see those half-stop clicks here. It's produced with a very smooth focusing helicoid that turns approximately 150 degrees, which gives it a nice range or a nice focus throw. Also has 12 blades to its aperture, which you can see here. And those blades allow the lens to render bokeh in a reasonably smooth area if you're trying to achieve bokeh with a 35mm lens. It's also importantly that this is a flat field lens, meaning that it has very little distortion, very little pin cushion, very little barrel distortion, and very little field curvature. So all of those things are very important if you happen to be a landscape or architecture photographer and you need those elements to be untainted. There are a few knocks. The first being that this lens, despite its size, does obstruct the viewfinder if you're using a viewfinder camera such as a Leica M rangefinder by about 25%, meaning that 25% of your field of view might be blocked when you're shooting down the barrel with this lens using the rangefinder. So that's a bit of an issue. The other issue I would suggest is vignetting. Now, I personally don't mind vignetting that much. I think it adds a little drama to the photography that you happen to be doing, but it is an optical limitation for certain lenses. And while this APO lens does not have hard vignetting, which would therefore necessitate a crop, the soft vignetting in this lens is present from f2 all the way through f8, meaning that you would have to correct vignetting in post-processing should you want to use this lens. I tried to use some of the 6-bit codes to try to correct some of the vignetting that I was seeing, and it does a decent job but not a perfect job. So expect vignetting if you're going to use this lens, but expect otherwise near perfect optical performance. While this lens is apochromatically corrected, it does still suffer from a little bit of chromatic aberration just based on the nature that it is hard to manufacture an apochromatic lens at the wide angle. So if you're expecting complete absence of issues such as purple fringing or similar color shifts, you might see a smidge of that if you're using this lens. But it's going to be the same with the $8,000 Leica lens, just so you know. So part of this is perspective. Here we're having a $1,000 optic perform at the level of an $8,000 M lens. And can I say that with confidence? Yes, I can. And other reviewers have said the same thing. Incredible build quality, incredible real-world imaging, using all of the modern technology possible. And I'm hoping that the images that I've shared along the way will help demonstrate how high quality of a lens this really is. I personally find that out of focus rendering, which has been one of the criticisms of this lens in other reviews, is actually really pleasing. A lot of it depends on how separated your foreground subject matter is from your background out of focus. Other issues such as how busy your actual background is and how you position yourself to achieve proper out of focus. That's as much an issue of the photographer as it is of the lens. And while you don't have an f1.2 aperture to blur everything out, f2 is a solid aperture to make the background less distracting, and that's what this lens achieves. I don't think you'll be disappointed by this lens if you own it. The only issues, like I say, are issues of slight ergonomic limitations and vignetting. That's kind of it. And at the end of the day, if you want a high performing optic that's going to meet the demanding standards of your Leica M10, M10R, M11, or monochrome cameras, this is going to meet those demands easily. And if you want this lens, please check out CameraQuest. Hard to beat. So I highly recommend Voïgtlander when you're using and thinking about your Leica cameras today. Hope you're all doing well. I'll be back with further reviews in the future. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.